Hello, as many of you know, my name is Christopher Oliva with RE/MAX at the Shore, and this is my dear friend Tom Heist.
How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Terrific.
Now, we're kind of new at this. This is only part 2, so this is screenshot number 2 for you all, so bear with us. This particular video is about the flood insurance. I know I've been getting a lot of calls, and I got to tell you, thank you for the response that we had on the first video, and I know you received a lot of great response on it as well. So this is the reason that we're doing this. Obviously the flood maps is the big reason, so we wanted to get this out to you as soon as possible. So without delay, we'll jump right into this. My first question, Tom, tell me about flood reform.
Well, flood reform is something that took place on July 6th of 2012, so more than a year ago. It's something that Congress felt had to happen because the flood program was in a humongous debt. They were about $18 billion in debt before Hurricane Sandy. They think Sandy's going to be somewhere between $8 and $10 billion. So Congress understood that they could not continue to spend money that was not there, and the general idea is to phase out the old subsidized premiums, and all new policyholders are going to have what they call true risk premiums, true risk rates.
Now, you said subsidized. Explain that to me.
Yeah, subsidized means that the rate that they were charging is not actuarially sound, which means at the end of the day, as they collect premium and pay losses, the program cannot sustain itself. So the subsidized properties are the homes that were built before January 1, 1975. Every property built after 1975 is high enough off the ground, and they're not subsidized properties. So the subsidized properties are the old properties built before January 1, 75.
And when does this take effect?
Well, Bigger Waters is a phase-in of lots of different things. The first people that were affected were the people who own second homes, and they're getting a phase-in of approximately 25% of a rate increase per year until the rates are actuarially sound, and we're guessing that's going to be somewhere around 5 years. The primary homeowners of the older homes built before 75, they're not going to be really affected by a 25%, maybe 8 or 10% rate, and their first major premium change would happen if the maps came out and said that they're substantially under the new flood requirement for height. And I think, as we're going to lead into, the new maps are great. Everyone in Ocean City and the surrounding communities are very happy with the outcome of the new flood maps.
Yeah, explain the 2 zones that we were talking about before briefly, because I think we have some good news for most of the people at home.
We do. Well, the 2 flood zones in Ocean City and most of the Barrier Islands prior to this recent addition of maps were the A zone, which were most of the homes, and then the V zone, and those homes have to be on piers or pilings. They're normally closer to the bays or the beach. With the new map, the V zone is gone. As far as I can tell, I've looked at the maps pretty closely, and maybe there's a handful out there, but I don't know where they are. The V zone is gone, and now we have what's called an X zone. And the X zone, basically, it's not in a flood zone, which is somewhat hard for me to believe that we have homes on a barrier island that are not considered to be in a flood zone. So there's not a lot of those properties, but today the 2 zones are X and A instead of A and V.
That's wonderful news. That V zone was a high velocity, right?
A high velocity zone.
1 to 3 foot waves.
Well, actually expects greater than 3 feet of wave action.
Wow. Yeah, and and you and I both knew this when they first came out with the preliminary map. There was quite a few homes that didn't seem to be at any risk of that, per definition.
I agree.
And they got it right. It went away.
They did. They did get it right. It is. And I think there's been some pent-up demand for real estate, and a lot of people that I've been talking to have been on the fence. They just wanted some security that the flood premiums weren't going to be astronomical at some point in the future. And with the release of the new maps, it really could not have been a better situation for property owners.
It really is great news. So these new maps, are they adopted, or is this still in a
They're
preliminary
not
phase?
formally adopted yet. They're in a preliminary phase. They are going to have some public hearings and over the course of the next year, and FEMA is telling us that they will be formally adopted sometime around October 1 of 2014. So 1 year from this October.
Gotcha. Now, there's been some question. You and I have had this conversation about the measurement now, how they're measuring
Right.
elevation. You know, if you can talk to us about that a little
Yeah,
bit.
I get a million questions about this new way to measure, and you know I want to keep it pretty simple. The old way to measure, we'll call it 1929 datum, and that old way to measure was on every elevation certificate from the beginning of the flood program until today. The new maps have what's called 1988 datum, and essentially the 1988 datum in Ocean City, if you had a 10-foot with 29 datum here, the 10-foot with the 88 datum is another 15 inches higher than the old 10. Same with 9. If you were at 9, the new 9 is about 15 inches higher. As you go south into Strathmere and Sea Isle City, it's pushing 16 inches. As you go north, it's a little bit less. It could be 13 inches. But there's some equation. The long and short of it is, you might want to just look at that, but you're not going to be able to do that translation yourself. You need to hire a surveyor to go out and survey the property to know exactly where your home lies. You're not going to be, it's not like you can, you can fix your own roof, and you might be able to wire your own house, but unless you're a surveyor, you can't measure the elevation.
And the surveyor would give what we're used to having for closings, which is an elevation certificate, right?
Exactly.
Is that what you're talking
the
about?
new datum will be on the elevation certificates, and really I would suggest that you just tell the surveyor that you want the survey done on both the 1929 datum and the 88 datum. But the 88 datum is way more important than the 29 datum.
It's the new,
It's the new standard
Gotcha.
that really goes into effect October 1 of next year. So there could be a handful of surveyors out there just providing the data using the 29 datum.
So should people get those elevation certificates now, or should they wait a little
Well,
bit?
if they're buying a home, I would say you absolutely should do it. The federal government is not requiring an elevation certificate on the older homes built before January 175. They're not requiring it until this coming October. But if
Okay.
you're considering buying a home in the month of September and you're not getting an elevation certificate, and you're going to have no idea of where that home falls on compliance. If you're like me, everyone wants to save money, right?
Right.
So wouldn't you want to know exactly what your flood premiums are going to be? By letter of the law, you can just come in and buy what's called a pre-firm policy for an older home, and we'll sell you that policy, but on your first renewal after this October, you're going to have to provide that elevation certificate.
Gotcha.
So in my mind,
Get
you got to do it now.
Just get it. So, let's see, where are we here? So the new maps, they'll affect the insurance premiums about when? A year from now?
As soon as they're formally adopted.
Okay, so you're thinking possibly a year.
Possibly a year, and nothing really moves on the timeline that they anticipate.
Sure.
I would say it could even be sometime early 2015.
I want to run something past you. I had a situation where I've been showing a house. This house is currently on the market, and let's just say it was $500,000
Right.
in its best day, and then after Sandy, they've pulled some of the walls open, about 4 feet up, still
Right.
sitting unfinished.
Right.
But the house is in great shape. Other than that, for
Right.
someone to go in, they just
Right.
put some drywall, paint, and carpet back in. It's a great house.
Right.
But this is where my question lies. When they're unfinished, I already know that the mortgage companies are having issues with financing them because they feel there's a risk of financing a home that's not put together and not complete
They
or
do.
operable. So that's part of it. But if they were to pay cash for it, the question is, do they have to lift this house? And should they be lifting these houses now?
Well, they don't necessarily have to lift the house. There's certain homes that have to be lifted within 4 years of the date of the Sandy loss, which was October 29th of 2012. So
What would
those,
make a house have to be lifted?
if your home has a substantial damage letter from the city, and a substantial damage letter would be your damage exceeded 50% of what we'll call the market value. And the market value is, if you look at your tax bill, you have land and improvement. The improvement is what the city is using as the market
So
value.
it's the structure. Yeah, there's no use.
Just the structure.
It's not hurting the land.
Not
so
the
there's-
land.
Yeah, I got you.
So it's more than 50%. The damage equals 50% of that.
So the example being, if it was a $500,000 assessment total, and the land was $350,000, and the house was only at $150,000, or the improvements were $150,000,
Then if the flood loss was
75,000 or greater,
exactly.
you would fall under that 4-year period of either tearing it down or raising it.
That's right. So those property owners have to raise the home within 4 years
Well, and it's 4 years of Sandy.
of
right?
Sandy. Now those owners are also eligible for a $15,000 reimbursement to, or a $30,000 reimbursement to elevate the home,
To offset.
to offset that cost. Now that's only if they elevate, and it's a reimbursement. It's not like they're just going to send you the money
Ah.
and hope that you do it. It's a reimbursement.
Do you apply prior to for that, or after you've completed?
Once you have a contract, you would send it into the insurance company, a signed contract, you're all ready to elevate. You send it into the insurance company, and in most cases, they'll give you some starting money to start that construction process.
Great. Great.
That money is also available to demolish the home as well.
So, and here's where that comes in, because
Yes.
many times the customers I'm working with will ask me, well, all right, I have to elevate it. Is it going to be ridiculous like some of the houses? I think we've all
Right.
seen a few of them that really look, I don't know if they look eye appealing to some and not to me, but
Well,
some
I'll
of them
tell
look really high.
Those homeowners are going to get a check back from FEMA, because the higher you are, the cheaper your flood premium. I think at a certain point they'll send you a check. And I think some of those owners may be eligible for money.
They might mistake you for the portico.
But the reality of it is, anyone who elevated or built new from the time Sandy, or Governor Christie passed the advisory-based flood maps to last week, they had to elevate to that requirement. It's not like they chose to be there. The city and the state required those homeowners to be at that elevation. With the new data that came out, they actually decided that the wave action wasn't going to be as great as anticipated, and that's what changed all the maps, including the elevation. So those homeowners really just didn't do that on their own. They were forced to do that.
Gotcha. So, is that kind of covering, you think,
It really
all
does.
the changes in the last couple? Because these maps just came out late last week.
Yes,
Right.
yes. We've been waiting patiently. We were told that they would be out sometime in July, and it actually was really towards the end of August. But the news could not have been better for your customers and my customers.
It's great news.
And really everyone, all along the shore, not just Ocean City. The maps came back very favorable in Margate, Ventnor, Atlantic City, and really up and down the coast.
That's great news. Well, listen, I would like to thank you for taking the time to watch this, and to thank Tom Heist at Tom Heist Insurance for his time and expertise. So thank you very much.
My
Appreciate
pleasure,
it.
Chris.
Look forward to hearing from you guys. If you have any questions, obviously email me back. I'll be happy to get answers for you if we didn't cover something. Tom and I are both in the service business, and we realize that. So anything you need, just reach out, and we'd be happy to answer it for you. Thanks again. Thank you.